I just want to welcome you all here. I'm Allison Klein. I'm the board president of the Cape Cod Center for Women. And we're here at the Falmouth Public Library and very honored to have an author, Lawanna Lynn, here. She has an amazing story about being a survivor of domestic violence. And this event is to acknowledge October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we're very lucky to have Lawanna here. She's going to speak for about maybe 35 or 40 minutes, and then there'll be some time for a question period at the end. And she's brought her book called Is She Dead Yet? And she's here to sign books at the end and speak individually with you at the end of the day. So we're very honored to have her, and Lawanna, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Lawanna Lynn. I'm the author of the book, Is She Dead Yet? And I just want to thank the Cape Cod Center for Women for inviting me to come out and share with you my personal story of how I survived domestic abuse. When I was in it, had no idea, didn't think it was domestic abuse. It was just something that we go through. I'm going to talk a little bit about how long I stayed in that marriage. I'm going to talk about why I stayed so long in that marriage. And I'm also going to talk about what made me so predisposed to be in that type of relationship. And it goes back, not just to meeting the young man when I did, but it goes back to my childhood. I love my parents. Unfortunately, they're both deceased right now. Not like they're not going to be tomorrow, but you know what I mean. And every now and then I'll throw in a little bit just to lighten up the room, because domestic violence is such a horrible thing. It can bring you down. And sometimes after I've given a talk and share my experience, when I get home, on that drive home, I just feel so overwhelmed with gratitude first for the fact that I was able to get up and that I was able to survive it. I think about what brought me to that place, and then I'm so thankful that I'm able to share the story to others so that what happened to my friend won't happen to them. So let me go back a little bit. The name of the book is She Dead Yet? And you said, why would somebody name the book Is She Dead Yet? Well, when I was growing up, I grew up in a Christian home, and my grandfather was a deacon at church. And every Sunday, we'd be at Grandma and Grandpa's for dinner. And Grandpa would have us come downstairs, and all the little kids get down on our knees, and we would pray. And we became well aware that the devil is real, and he wanted to kill Christians and destroy them, and to make life difficult for them. So I always felt like I was being persecuted. As I grew older, I knew that things just can't be happening. Good things happen to good people and bad things happen to good people and bad. But why is it that I feel like somebody's trying to hurt me, kill me, destroy me? And yes, the devil is real, and yes, he is here to destroy us, and that's what was my upbringing. Like I said, Grandpa was a deacon. Say a little bit something about Grandpa a little bit later. My mother and father met when they were quite young, and I have one brother, one older brother, and two younger sisters. I'm the oldest girl, and how many of you know the oldest girl is the caretaker? Yes, you know that. So one strike, I was a caretaker. My mother was sick, often with asthma, so she was in and out of the hospital. And so I was not only big sister, but I was surrogate mom, and preparing meals and helping out my brother and sister with their school. So I also became an overachiever, you know what I mean? That's why I was number 3 in my class in high school. because I felt the need to take care of people and take care of things and make everything all right, that also made me susceptible to being in a relationship with an abuser. My father was an alcoholic. So that was another thing that added to the reason as to why I was in that type of relationship. My father being an alcoholic meant that every 2 weeks on payday, what do you think would happen? What would happen? He would drink. So mommy would be on his job, be right there, get the check so that she can go food shopping and feed the 3 kids. Okay, maybe dad didn't like the fact that she took, most of his money, but either way, he would come home drinking. So every 2 weeks on Friday night, us 3 little kids would be sitting on the couch crying because mom and dad would be. Why would they be fighting? Why would they be fighting? Me as a little kid, I didn't know. As I got older and became a teenager, there were some things that I had to deal with as far as myself is concerned as to why do people drink? Why is there alcoholism? And I was just so sure that alcoholism is a choice. Did a little research, and then I came to believe that alcoholism is a disease. Either way, it was conflicting to me. Either way, because I love both my parents, and I wanted to be there to support them and help them. And I also didn't want to make waves when Daddy was sober, because when he was sober, he was a little cranky. Okay? So as a child, I learned how to walk on eggshells in the house. I learned how to be quiet. I learned how to not make waves. I learned how to be the good girl. And in being the good girl, making the good grades, taking care of my brother and sister, helping mom out with housework and chores. So, needless to say, when I met my abuser, that was forbidden in my house. I was a straight A student at this time. At 17 when I met my boyfriend. And when I met him, he was fascinating. I'll tell you something else, but he was fascinating, okay? He was tall, he was good looking, he had a lot of charisma, pizzazz. He could sell ice to an Eskimo, okay? He was very dynamic, very outgoing, and I felt like I was behind him all the time. And that's how he was able to sweep me away. As a teenager, I had self-esteem issues. I was skinny, I was dark-skinned, I wore glasses, my hair was short, it grew. And I was teased a lot, but I made up for that by being, very studious. I made up for that by making people laugh and feel comfortable, not laugh at me, but laugh with me. So again, I had a couple of things going on in my life that made me susceptible to an abusive relationship, and I got married. He just swept me off my feet and moved me away. But I never realized that while we were dating, when he choked me, that, something was wrong. He had asked me about past relationships, and all of a sudden he lunged for my throat, and he stopped, and then he started crying and holding me. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that. Oh, I'm so sorry. That'll never happen again. Let me buy you something. I'm going to buy you. So he started buying me things, taking me out. And my mother, she was like, I remember he took me to the store once to buy me a jacket. I'm taking this off as my little too much. So, let me just tell you this one. He took me out, and he was going to buy me this beautiful leather jacket. And I was saying, oh no, you can't do that. I can't accept that. Oh, I really want to make up to you. I feel so terrible for, hurting you the way I did. No, I can't accept that. Well, let me take you out, take me out to eat, buy me things. When I came home and I said, yeah, Mom, he wanted to buy me a leather jacket. You know what she said to me? What? And you didn't take it? I know where it came from. So I was like, no, I didn't take it. What's wrong with you, girl? But remember, my mother was married to an alcoholic. So there was something to be said about her as being a caregiver, or as being, there's a key word, I'm sure some of you have heard of it, called codependent. She was codependent on my dad because he worked. and drank on the weekends, she was able to not work, stay home with the kids, and therefore he took care of her. So she was kind of linked to him that way, because had she left him, where would we be? We would be homeless. We would be in a shelter. We would be at Grandma and Grandpa's. But my mother was very strong, very independent, and she didn't want that. And as far as I was concerned, and growing up in the church, you stood by your man. You stayed home, and you took care of your family at all costs. And that's what I learned. So I learned how to be codependent. I learned how to be an appeaser. And I hated that word. When somebody told me I was a appeaser, I said, no, I am not. Yes, you are. So there were things that I had to deal with as far as who I was and what I was, how people perceived me, how I perceived myself, and what other that happened to me in order to maintain this facade of, I got it going on. So I did things. I took the abuse. But okay, I married the man. And at 18, I accepted Christ as my personal Savior, went to my uncle's church, and my husband accepted Christ too, and he was on the go. We were going to Bible school, we were learning all the scriptures on wives, how to be submissive. Ooh, you've heard that word before. I learned all kinds of things about the role of the wife, but I also learned that husbands are to love their wives and take care of them. They're supposed to love their wives just like Christ loved the church, and they've done his life for the church. There's no way in the world this man should be hitting me, beating me, slapping me, kicking me, punching me, spitting on me, pulling me my hair, pulling me off the toilet, doing all kinds of crazy, ridiculous things. And each time that something would happen in our relationship, the scripture would come to mind, forgive, 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 forgive. And then I would go in the closet, not in the closet literally, but I would go somewhere and pray, Lord God, change him. Lord God, change him. That was my prayer for years. The first time there was an incident where my husband had punched me. He punched me in the jaw. I'll tell you what precipitated that. Punched me in the jaw and my ribs, and I couldn't get out of bed. When I did eventually crawl to the bathroom and look at myself in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself because my eyes were swollen. My jaw was shiny. My mother had called me because she had called the job and I wasn't there because I called out and said, oh, I'm not feeling too good today. I'm not going to come in. Okay, Lawanna, let's go. I had a good relationship with her. Don't worry about it. My mom called that morning. What's going on? I'm not feeling good. Well, what happened? Well, see, we got into a fight. What? And she started screaming and hollering and everything all over the phone. And at that time, I lived in Philadelphia, and the city of Philadelphia had a transit strike going on, so there was no buses or trains running. And a few hours later, there was banging at the door, and I couldn't get downstairs fast enough because we lived in an upstairs duplex. I couldn't get downstairs fast enough to open the door before I realized that my father left without me getting to the door, without waiting. He left me. That hurt. Jeff wasn't going to answer the door. No. He was sulking by this time. He was very apologetic. My father had a ride. Someone had, volunteered to drive him to our apartment to check on me. But then they said they had to leave, so my father took the ride and he left me. So I felt as though I had to struggle with this myself. With the endless apologies that my husband provided, I accepted and I forgave. I went to work, and one of my coworkers looked at me and she says, so, Lawanna, what happened to you? My face was still swollen. My jaw was still swollen. What happened to you? She was my coworker. What do you think I said to her?
Walk into the door.
I lied. Exactly. I lied. Oh, it's nothing. Don't. We were just playing around. You know, he accidentally hit me with his elbow. That's all. She looked at me and she said something to me to this day I will never ever forget. She said, "Don't you ever let me find out that he hit you." And guess what?
Found out.
She never found out. She never found out because I wasn't telling. And I was, let me see, I don't know, I was in my early 20s. I was in my early 20s. And she never found out. I say this because so many of us know someone who's been in or currently is in an abusive relationship. Some of us work with people that are in an abusive relationship, and we implore them to leave, but for some reason they don't. They can't. Or you may suspect they're in an abusive relationship, but they won't come out and tell you. They may come to work with long sleeves and turtlenecks and scarves and pants covering their legs, ankles, arms, necks. And you suspect it, but you don't know what to do. I would say offer them your ear, offer them your confidence, and offer them resources. Okay, so I was telling you about being married and that particular incident where my husband had punched me in the jaw. Again, it was a transit strike, and what precipitated that was the fact that I was preparing a birthday party for one of our kids. Now, we had two, so that time I think it was maybe a 3 or 4-year-old birthday party, and I needed some supplies, and my husband's friend offered to take me to get these supplies. And as I was exiting his car to come back home, he grabbed me and he kissed me. And I was like, whoa, 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 where's this coming from? And I got out of the car. So I told my husband about it. I told my husband about it, and that's when he beat me like it was all right. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll call the pastor. I'll call the pastor, I'll make a meeting, and I'll go and tell him what happened. So I go to church, make an appointment, see the pastor, we go into the conference room. I sit down and I say, Pastor, my husband hit me. He beat me up pretty bad. Because it did eventually go to a clinic and was determined that my ribs were broken. Not that the jaw was broken, because I could still eat and talk. It was just, badly bruised. And you know what the pastor said to me? Give me your hand. He said, darling, what did you do to make him hit you? You say, of course. And I was like, well, maybe I did do something to deserve it. Maybe I did. Maybe I wore too much doggone lipstick. Maybe my dress was a little bit too short. I'll fix that. I will look homely. We were going to Pentecostal church at that time. And that's how, Pentecostal church is somebody like, long skirts, no pants, no lipstick, no makeup. I was a little progressive at the time. I was like, red lipstick, ooh. Oh my goodness, that's what that man said to me. And I believed him that I did something to deserve to be punched. So with that, I changed some of the things that I used to do. Take it easy. Don't make waves. I was back home. In my mind, I was back home. I was doing things to make things good at home when I was a teenager and a young child with my mom and dad, not to make waves so that my father wouldn't get upset and, blow a fit or have a fight or argue with mom. So at home, I was a perfect little wife. I baked cakes, happy yeast, big pies, went to work every day, took care of the kids, paid the bills because my husband lost his job. So we're a family. We're going to stick it through. We're going to work this out. the pastor did say, you know what? Let's appoint another deacon in the church to walk alongside your husband, just to make sure that he's okay and thinking straight and, on the straight and narrow. Okay, great. But did you think the man that I was married to kept those appointments for accountability with someone else? Do you think he kept those appointments? Why? An abuser doesn't want to be accountable to his actions. An abuser will take you away from your family and isolate you so that he can control you. Your abuser will say, you know what, nobody loves you. You're not worth anything. You're ugly. You're skinny, you're dark skinned, you wear glasses, you got short hair. I'm the only one that's going to love and take care of you. Just stay right here. For years, I believed that lie. I believed that lie. And I stayed married to that man for 23 years. 23 years. But wait a minute, it wasn't all bad. If you know the cycle of domestic abuse, you know it comes in waves. It's like a roller coaster. Some days the guy is really up high, and when he's up high, he's buying me things. He's taking me places. He's providing for me. He is a pillar in the community. When you're in an abusive relationship, the abuser gives this false sense of security, letting you think that everything is okay. You're going to be just fine. Every now and then you go through, spats, disagreements, arguments, and after all, I live with an alcoholic father. And I knew that it came in waves. I could predict every 2 weeks, right? It was predictable. That was what I was used to. That's what I grew up in. So it was, hey, we fight, we argue, and we keep it moving. We've got 2 kids. At this point, we had 2 kids. We keep it moving. So during the times when my abuser was up high, and I said he bought me things, well, what happened was, I threatened to leave. I'm going to leave because we had this big fight. I'm going to leave. I can't take this anymore. I'm going to go stay with my mom. So I went to stay with my mom. He called me. I need you. I need you. I love you. I'm going to take care of you. Well, the only reason I'm going to come back is if you buy me a house. Guess what he did? He bought me a house. Not any house. A house out of town. Away from my family. Your abuser will pull you away and get you away from your resources. The children love you. The children love you. So, got this house. We're up here now. Because he's now in a new place, new surroundings. We make new friends so he can present a new facade. Okay? So he's upstanding. He's in the community. He has his own business now. Things are going great. We've got the house, I'm working, the kids doing good. We join this church and people have babies, and so I go and have one. And somebody used to say to me, is that a Band-Aid baby? Anybody ever hear about a Band-Aid baby? Has anybody ever heard that?
Yeah.
You never heard that? What's a Band-Aid baby?
It's the fix-it baby.
The
It's
fix-it
a baby you have that will make the marriage better.
Now you know what a Band-Aid baby is. Oh, my Band-Aid baby was beautiful. Oh, she's adorable. She's a sweetheart. And Jeff just took care of her because he had his own business. He was working from home. So after I had the baby, her name was Michelle. After I had Michelle, I stayed home with him for a little while. I did some things to help him with his business. And I couldn't quite reconcile where this extra money was going. And I wanted to know, if you want me to do the taxes, where is this? What happened here? And what's going on here? And he didn't like that. Because I was challenging him. And at the time, I was a little frustrated. I was tired. I'm holding this 3-month-old baby, trying to figure out this. Holding the baby, and I'm saying, well, what is this, and what is this, and why is that? You know what this man did to me? While holding his baby. He punched me so hard in my gut, I fell against the bathroom with the baby in my arms and fell to the floor. And we were both crying. I mean, the baby and I were both crying. And I sat there like, did he just do that? He stepped back, sat on the couch. Did he come pick us up, hold us, caress us? Did he just do that? Let me get myself together and go upstairs. And that's what I did. I sulked for a while. And then again, he mourned. Then again, he apologized. Then again, he cried. And I'm so sorry. And then again, what did I do? I forgave. I forgave. I'm going to deviate for a minute. When I told you about the book, Is She Dead Yet? Why did I write it? I didn't talk about why I wrote it. Because after I got out of the abusive relationship, which I eventually did, of course, after 22 years, I was on Long Island. I left Philadelphia, media area, and I moved to Long Island for a job and also to get away from my abuser. So I was, you know, pretty good. I was working. I brought Michelle with me. By that time, our other children, Christine and Jeff, they were much older. They were in their late teens, early 20s. They were pretty much on their own, so they did not come to Long Island, New York with me. And I was doing great on my job. And I met a friend of mine through a friend of a friend, and this guy says he needs someone to help with his certification to be a counselor. And what they do is pick 10 people and work with them on developing their goals, short-term and long-term. So I volunteered, yes, you can work with me, and we talked about my short-term goals and we talked about my long-term goals. My short-term goals are pretty simple: clean out the garage, the basement, get a computer, a laptop, or whatever, do this, that, and the other thing. Long-term goal was to write a book. Because I had left that abusive relationship in Pennsylvania, one of my friends would tell her friends about it because she was so inspired that I finally, after all this time, had the courage to leave. And what happened was that she began to counsel other women in her church. She was a pastor's wife. And she used to help other women and talk to them about getting out of their abusive relationship. And as I started writing the book, you know, I write a chapter here, a chapter there, you know, no big deal. And what made it so great was that I kept my journals, because while I was going through the relationship, I kept journals. And I don't know, in some jobs, in order for you to be a better time manager, they will take you through this course with, was it with Quest? I began with a Q. This company that helped you plan your life. And so I had these journals. I went through these journals and I'm reading this stuff and I'm writing, and I'm like, wow, I did go through something. Because I had blotted everything out after I got out, I was like, I'm done. I am done. And going through this, okay, I'm writing the book. Wow, I gotta step back because this hurts too much to relive it. Let me just put this down for right now. So one night, my girlfriend, who I told you about, she called me on the telephone and she was crying. She was sobbing uncontrollably. She was telling me that her friend, and that I knew the friend. I don't remember ever meeting her, but you know, when you're in church, there's so many people that you meet. She was telling me that Christine, what's the matter? What happened to Christine? Her and her husband had been counseling Christine to get away from Stanley. Stanley, Christine had been murdered. What? Stanley went to the job and shot and killed Christine in the job parking lot, got in the car, drove somewhere, surrounded by the police, calls his sons, I just killed your mother, and then he committed suicide. My girlfriend's crying. You have got to finish your book. You have got to finish your story. You've got to let other people know that there's hope. I cried. And then I went back to the typewriter. What am I talking about? Back to the computer. And I wrote the book, Is She Dead Yet? After I wrote it, people were calling me. You're telling my story. What do you mean I'm telling you? You're telling my story. I didn't realize how prevalent domestic abuse and domestic violence is. I thought I was writing something unique. And it's not at all. Took the book to the nursing home where my mother was. By this time, my father had already passed back in '92. And my mother was in a nursing home. She had suffered from rheumatic fever when she was a child. And so she developed rheumatoid arthritis in her old age. When I say old, she was only 73. So she was in a nursing home. I went to see her, took the book. She was so happy and proud that I finally wrote it, finally got it out. And boom, boom, boom. The next week, she was gone. She died within the very next week. But she was glad that I was able to tell the story. That's the reason why I wrote the book, is she dead yet? But in writing that book and that story, I learned so much about myself and the many reasons why I stayed in this relationship. And I told you at some point my husband was not working, and it seemed like wherever I worked, I was able to help him get a job. So we were like pretty well set, you know what I mean? We were pretty good on the money end. And I didn't kind of like want to lose that. And I said, well, I can kind of deal. I'm going back to when I was married. I can kind of deal with the roller coaster ride because I had a nice house. By this time, we had built this 4,000 square foot mansion. It was beautiful. 3-car garage, half an acre land. You know, we were still this pillar in the community of being the perfect couple. I was in that house for 6 months before I realized my life is so much more than a house. My life is so much more than what money can buy. And being assaulted in your own bedroom, being barricaded in your own closet, I had to do something. I had to stop praying, God, change him. Oh, God, please change him. I had to stop saying that prayer, God, change him. And I prayed a new prayer. What was that new prayer? God changed me. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and it was like the Oprah Winfrey aha moment. You know, I had an aha moment, and I said, God changed me. God changed me. Then I started going to the library, to bookstores, in the self-help section. You know, looking around, making sure nobody's looking. When I go sneak off into the section on divorce, remarriage. Then I started going into the sections about codependency. I went to work and my boss is saying to me, Lawanna, what is wrong? You are not performing well. What? I'm one of the best employees in this company. What are you talking about? He said, no, Lawanna, you are not doing well. What is going on? What do you mean what's going on? I look at you, and I'm looking at you, and you're looking straight through me. Lawanna, you're not even getting your work done right. I said, what are you talking about? I know what I'm doing. I'm an excellent employee. No, Lawanna, see your performance rating went from this to this. I didn't realize how it was affecting my work. He said, Lawanna, I want you to go see the Employee Assistance Program person. Do anyone know what that is? The EAP, they call it in some of the jobs where they offer this free counseling, free therapy, you get free 5 sessions or something like that, and they help you find a counselor or whatever. So that's what started me in going to counseling. It started me in going into thinking about what I needed to do to change my life. Because at that time, I was bad. I was bad. I left that big house. I got in the car one night after he ranted and raved all night saying, there's no way in the world would I leave him. No one's going to allow me to take away his children from him. And then I was like, oh my gosh. He said, I run the show around here. I'm the provider. You don't have anything. You are nothing. Nobody's going to let you keep these kids. I was scared to death. I was scared to lose my children. But all the while I was staying in the relationship to preserve the family. Just to preserve, just to keep the status quo, just to keep that facade. But I was dying inside. I went to EAP. Lawanna, we need you to get into council. We need you to do the protection from abuse order. You need to file reports. And when I decided to leave, I had my own little resources. I had like a separate bank account because way back. I mean, one of the first instances where we were arguing or fighting, a neighbor called the cops. The cops came in, they looked around, and by this time Jeff had already forced me to write a check out to clean out our account. And police officers said they came and they were standing around. Why don't you just go take a walk around the block and come back? That's what they told this man. Go around the block, take a walk. And that was back in 1978, maybe 79. So to me, cops weren't any good. What is the cop going to do? A few years later, when we were in the house before we moved to the big house, that's what I call it. Again, we were having an argument, and he just wrecked the bedroom. Everything was all awry. At that time, I had a protection from abuse order. My nephew was living with us. He was only like 7 years old. He was on the phone talking to my sister. My sister called the cops. Because I wasn't. What are cops going to do? What's the sense of having a PFA? What are they going to do? Cop came, you know what they did? They arrested him. They arrested him. He's got to work. He's got bills to pay. How am I going to do this by myself? So you can see all the different reasons why I stayed. I stayed because of money. I stayed because of status. I stayed because I thought it was a great thing to do to forgive this man over and over and over and over. I stayed because I wanted our children to have a two-parent home. I stayed because this is what we do as a family. We stick together through thick and thin. And I can barely get out of bed because my ribs are bruised. I can barely get out of bed because of internal bleeding. I could barely get out of bed to go to church to listen to him preach because I told you, did I tell you he became a pastor? Unbelievable. I knew I'm going to tell the bishop on this man because this is not right. I got to do something. Call the bishop. What are you talking about? Jeff's great. Can't talk to this guy. You know what? You can't even talk to anybody in the church about it. You've got to keep it. He brought us in for counseling. Jeff was here, I was here. I had moved out, had my own little apartment. Mind you, I had my little stash. I had my little bank account after that incident where the cop told him to take a walk around the block. The next morning, I got to the bank before he did and figured out to count myself. Open my own account. So I learned how to be financially set on this end. And because I was working all these years, I had a 401k, you know what I mean? I had some money that I could, put away. So when the bishop of our church, my husband, they did elect him. He was a pastor, and we had a small congregation, and he was on the high end at this time, okay? He was up here. So everything was good. Everything was good, yeah, Had our house, had our cars. But then, he said to me, you know what? This is not going to work. I said, I have to go. I can't live like this. I am worth so much more. I am worth so much more. And it took me a long time. And reading those books, I learned that I did not deserve to be kicked, beat, slapped, punched. I did not deserve to be cheated on. I did not deserve to be spit upon. I did not deserve any of those things. I had to really understand that my beauty and worth are far much more than any relationship you can have. I had to learn how to love myself and to forgive myself for the things that I may have done wrong in my past. I had to forgive myself for my poor choices. In the book where I talk about Is She Dead Yet, I break it up so that at the end of each chapter, oh wow, instead of doing this, I could have done that. And instead of this happening, this could have happened. Now, we always talk about this woulda, coulda, shoulda. Where you are now is where you are. And you have to live with yourself where you are right now. The past is the past. It will always be there. It will never change. But you can make choices for your future. You can propel yourself into freedom, into life, into just one. So that brings me to this. So I left and went to Long Island. I was doing great. Enjoying life. Just a second. And I was free. I was free. I had my own place. I was doing good. I was doing great. I lost a lot of weight. That's all right. You know, when you go through depression, you kind of lose weight. I went through depression. I couldn't sleep. So I had to go, and I was sick physically, a lot of stomach ailments and everything. Went to the doctor after I left, and she says, "Wow, Lawanna, you beat up, girl. Let me tell you what you need to do." So she helped me get into right counseling. She helped me with sleep aids to help me get through the depression. And then I started to feel. I started to feel that I was alive. And so I started doing stuff like this. You know, I went on cruises. I went snorkeling. I was doing stuff I've never done before. I was feeling again because I had been dead for so long. And when I say dead for so long is I was just going in the routine, being married and going through and up and down in the roller coaster, up and down, up and down, up and down. And I needed to feel alive. Someone said to me, "And you jumped out of a perfectly good plane?" That was a great day. I look at that and I just say, "Thank you, Lord, that I am out and I am done." So after the book came out and people were coming to me, "You told my story, please share." Here I am. I ended up here, Cape Cod, a place I would never think to come and visit. You know, I'm from the inner city. I used to live in the projects. You know, I walk to school every day. And to get the invitation to come here to share with you about how I escaped domestic abuse it is really important. When I told Jeff that I had to get out, that I had to leave, and he ran into rage and said that no court would allow me to keep my children, that he was the provider. And how dare you walk away from all this? I packed everything I could think of in the car after he left. All the things that the baby had, Michelle. Packed her blankets, her toys, her clothes. I'm walking around like this. What can I take? I go into my massive walk-in closet, and I'm standing there looking at it and said, "Forget it. Leave it. Taking my baby, and I'm getting out of here." So I'm loading up the car. I'm ready to go. I'm driving. Then it dawned on me, I didn't have anywhere to go. I wasn't going to go to Mommy's. Well, I still didn't tell my best girlfriend. And the kids, they got their own lives, and where am I going to go? By this time, I had already driven 45 minutes down the highway, and I was tired. 1 o'clock in the morning. Where am I going? Pull over to the Red Roof Inn off of 291 by Philadelphia Airport. And pulling up, I'm sitting there. All right, how much money I got? On me, cash. You know, I go in. Can I get a room? And she's telling me how much it costs. I'm like, no, I can't work it out here. So as I walk out, this young woman comes running out behind me. She said, "Do you need a place to stay tonight? You can come stay with me in my room." I started crying. Because he was a perfect stranger offering to take in this woman and her little girl in the car. "You can come stay in my room tonight." And I don't know who she is. I can't go back to her and hug her and say thank you. I can't go back to her and say, "You don't know how much that meant to me." I said, in my pride, in my embarrassment, in my shame, "Oh no, I got this, I'm good, thanks. Thank you anyway." I went to Motel 6 and I stayed there. I had enough of that. Until the next morning. And then I went to look for a place that I could call my own apartment. but my abuser stalked me there. I had to learn how to park my car facing outward anywhere I went, so in case he showed up, I could just get in and pull right out. I had to learn where the nearest police station was, so if he is behind me, following me, I would drive straight there. I had to learn to have a coworker screen my calls so that he wouldn't call me over and over and over and over, nagging me to either come back or threaten me that he was going to hurt me. It took a long time before I realized that I'm taking control of my life, and you're not going to be a part of it. And one day I looked him right dead in the eye and I said, "You see this? I did this audition. You see this? You ain't never touching it. Never." And he didn't. It took some time. One of my kids said to me when I left, "Mom, what took you so long?" You know, kids, I mean, you know, they knew that people argued. "Mom, what took you so long?" Another one said, "Don't ever think about going back." And how many times I was in the marriage for 23 years, I don't know how many times I left and went back, left and went back, left and went back, maybe 4 or 5 times, maybe 6 or 7. I think the number now is, on average, 8 to 10 times that you're in an abusive relationship that you go in and out before you're out and you stay out. The tolerance for men is a little less than that. And so when I come to talks like this to share about domestic abuse and domestic violence, I always come prepared with handouts for you. And so as I was preparing handouts and getting ready, I'll give you a minute. Last week I did law enforcement training to law enforcement officers of Delaware County and Pennsylvania. And I put up this slide because I usually come prepared with information and stats about domestic violence. And I just want to let you know that I was able to get some dynamite information for you, and I have it on the back table. And I want you to help yourself and feel free to get that information. But I just want to share a couple things about how prevalent domestic violence is. Now, you've probably heard these stats before. 1 in how many women are affected by domestic abuse in their lifetime? What's that magic number? 4. 4. Good. So you know that. On average, if you're in a domestic, abusive relationship, I think they call it intimate partner violence now. Is that what they call it now?
Yep.
Have you heard that term? Intimate partner. That's because a lot of the domestic violence, I hate to use that word victims because we're really not, but it's not happening between a husband and wife as much, or I shall say in addition to, because you now have common law relationships. You have boyfriend and girlfriend who don't live together, so it's that intimate partner that you have a relationship with as opposed to a husband and wife. And most of the victims of this type of abuse are females, and a small majority are men. And I think about the talks that I have in high schools with young ladies. Their ratio is a little higher than 1 in 4 for abusive relationships. It's 1 in 3. And that's scary because our young ladies, our daughters, our nieces, our goddaughters, our friends, co-workers and kids, they're going through this a lot more than older women are, and it's really sad because our young ladies need to know just how valuable they are, so that when a young man in high school or college says, "I'm going to buy you a phone so I can keep track of your behind," they will know that they shouldn't accept those kinds of gifts and that kind of control, because we know domestic abuse is all about control, where one person wants to take control of the finances, of the sexual relationship, of the, what else is there? The social, right? Because they take you away from from your family. They want to control so much of that. And I used to think that, well, what is wrong with these guys? Something's got to be wrong with them. But then I found out they know exactly what they're doing. It is not something that they cannot control. They know exactly. To me, it's like premeditated, calculated, manipulative. And a lot of times our young people, we'll see it as an outsider. We'll see what he's doing. I mean, I'm sure some of you have come across young people and you watch how the guy is treating the girl and you're saying like, what? And you just want to shake the young lady, but she doesn't know. She's so in love. I was so in love with this man. Did I tell you about Jack? Did I tell you about? I told you he was tall, right? I told you he was good looking, right? And I told you that he thought that no one in the world would love me as much as he did. And I believed that lie. So we have to encourage our young people to love themselves and to seek help when they're in an abusive relationship and not feel like it's something that's an anomaly. It's not. It is so common and so prevalent. So not only is domestic violence prevalent, but it leads to something deadly. When I got the story or heard the news about Christine and her being murdered by her husband Stanley, that was pretty devastating. And to know that she had a protection from abuse order in place, but yet Stanley was still able to get to her, that says a lot. She was even living, Christina was even living with her mother at the time. And had her employer knew, I think that might, I can't say I think that might have helped. I'm going to say that having your employer aware that you're in an abusive relationship will help if they have domestic violence policies in place, if they have security procedures in place, someone to walk you to and from your car, do you know what I mean? If they have a copy of the abuse order so that if he is lurking around the building facility or he is seen, that police can be called. There are a lot of agencies, even places like Cape Cod Center for Women, that will help with resources for individuals that are experiencing domestic violence. And I have information back about that as well. But intimate partner homicides comprise approximately, can you guess the percentage of all murders in the U.S.? 70?
That's real high, girl. Woo! That's real high.
A lot lower. Any other guesses?
What?
Actually, it's 10%. 10% of all murders in the U.S. is intimate partner homicide. In recent years, 2 out of 5 female murder victims were killed by an intimate. I have this resource here, again, I sit on the back table. If the female is trying to protect herself and she buys something to protect herself, and 9 times out of 10, she purchases a gun to protect herself, do you think that's helpful or harmful? Why would you think it's harmful?
Because he'll probably jail or something like this.
Not only that,
You're giving him a weapon.
you're giving him, exactly, you're giving him a weapon. And it's really a shame that we feel like we have to do that. And there was a young lady I met who heard the story of a woman who actually went to jail because she killed her abuser. And she was in jail for a long time before a law was instituted that overturned her case and she was set free. But it was this woman who decided to go to law school, to become an attorney, to help women or those that are victims of domestic abuse, to help them in that manner. I'm going to go over a couple of, let me see if I can get this right. There you go. When I was able to get a website up, I found 50 facts about domestic violence, but I only decided to pick the top 10. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to take a look at that. And the first one is so shocking, shall I say the second one, it's really, really shocking, that the number of U.S. troops that were killed in Afghanistan and Iraq was 6,600. The time frame was 2001 after 9/11 to June 2011. During that same period, 11,766 women were killed behind TV. When I look at these numbers and see how staggering it is, it just tells me just how doggone important it is for us to take strides against domestic violence, to offer hope for those women that are going through it, to offer shelter for those that decide to leave an abuser and have a place to go before they can get on their own. And again, that's why I wrote this book, Is She Dead Yet? When I think about Christine and Stanley and their 2 sons that they left behind and the impact on our children. When I think about what my kids told me, one says, "What took you so long?" The other said, "Don't ever go back." Doggone it, the 2 oldest ones, Christine and Jeff, ended up in abusive relationships. Now, saying, what? I never knew that my daughter's boyfriend punched her. She didn't tell me. And you know, when I found out about it, you know, I was like all over it. By that time, she was already out of the relationship, and I didn't know. My son, gentle giant as he is, stayed with a woman who drank a little bit too much. And when she drank, she was abusive. When I found out that she hit him at the top of his head with the heel of her shoe and drew blood, someone called the cops. You know what? He was so concerned about her. He was so concerned about her going to jail for hurting him. And that broke my heart. That broke my heart. They're both out of those abusive relationships. They're not dating anyone right now. My baby girl, Michelle, she's 23. She is. She's dating Josh. And she's happy. But she quit college. It's another story. That's another story, leave me alone. But I'm saying that our children are so impacted by domestic abuse. And we have to realize that if we save anyone, it is our children. Our children are our future. I want to thank you for coming this afternoon. And I want you to know if you have any questions right now about the story. You notice I left out the end, but I do want to share one thing before we go to Q&A. So, I don't know if anyone's noticed.
Yes.
Yes.
I know.
Thank you so much. Bling, 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 bling. I got married 4 months ago to an amazing man. David, would you stand up, honey? David, would you stand up? He is such a sweetheart. I'm so happy. This man is all right. Y'all hear me? The man is all right. Thank you, sweetheart. We are honeymooners. We got married 4 months ago.
Hey.
It was great. I'm just loving it. I'm so loving it. Honeymoon on Cape Cod. And this is interesting because we went to this Christian dating site, christianmingle.com. That's right now. With christianmingle.com, you get to check out, you know, their likes and dislikes. You know what I mean? They kind of match you up. They work it through. You know, and even on eHarmony, they do the background checks on the guy. So he says who he is, and you confirm that he is who he says he is. That's pretty good compared to what we did, you know, 35 years ago. Just meet the guy, oh, because he looked good, because he talked, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to let you know, sweetheart, I love you, and I just thank you for helping. Thank you so much. I'd like to open the floor for any questions that you might have for me. You can ask me anything.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If your child is not living in an abusive, parents, why is it that the child ends up in an abusive relationship?
It's a lot of factors, and I think it has to do with our own individual self-worth. Once I believe the lie that, I wasn't worthy There's some things about me and my past that I'm not proud of, and I carried that guilt with me into the relationship, and so that's why I felt low self-esteem. And I think once our kids understand their worth and what they deserve, then I think some relationships will change. Yeah. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm just speaking from my own personal
Well, I
life.
have a friend that has a child, and they had it very good growing up.
Mm-hmm.
The father and mother are not together, but they're great parents.
Mm-hmm.
But his daughter has a tendency of going
Picking the wrong guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's sad, and we have to help our girls understand just how wonderful and worthy and beautiful that they are, and they don't deserve any
Not
type
at
of
all.
abusive relationship, and I think it's our duty to help them in that manner. I'm sorry, yes.
Did your married friends, when you were married and you were going through this and you found yourself divorced, did they suddenly like drop you?
It's interesting you say that, because when I left and it was known that my husband abused me, a lot of our friends dropped. No one would go near him with a 10-foot pole. And I was very hurt that the men would not make him accountable or to even go to him, to counsel him, or to be a friend, or to help him. I still loved my husband after all those years. I loved him, so with a long-handled spoon, after I left. And I wanted to, make sure he was doing okay. Because after I left, he started to drink more and use drugs more, and some not so nice things happened. But the fact that a lot of our friends, who I thought were our friends, just discontinued, knowing him, and it was just like he never existed. There were some friends that stood by me and helped me and would, come and pray with me, talk with me, and that was good, but I was really hurt that he was left alone. Yes, ma'am.
You talked a lot about your parents and your background, because of their issues, but I don't think you said anything about what his background was like, his childhood. Was he?
Yes, his father was a weekend alcoholic. His father abused his mother. His mother had, it's an illness where you don't want to go outside. Do you know what that is?
Agoraphobia?
Yes, agoraphobia. She never went outside. I couldn't understand why she never went outside. She was afraid, but yes, there was an abusive family. I remember family dinners, Thanksgiving or funerals, fights break out among siblings as well.
But do you think she ever suspected that you were being victimized by her son?
No, I think she had a mental illness with the agoraphobia. Thank you. I used to know that word. I used to know it. But yes, I think she suffered a nervous breakdown because of her relationship with her husband. Because there were times I would look at her and I knew she didn't know who I was. And she and father passed away a year within each other. So one died and then a year later the other died. And that was all before 1980. Yes.
Do you think, is it your opinion that abusers can be rehabilitated or somehow recover from being abusers, or is it your experience that once someone goes down that path,
I understand your question. I do. And I'm sad because after I separated and left and divorced, my ex-husband started dating this young girl, and they had a baby. My children, my two older children, knew about her, and they knew that she was pregnant. I didn't know. They were afraid to tell me, like I was going to be jealous. I could string them out on that one. But when they told me that she was pregnant, I panicked. Because Jeff choked me while I was pregnant with Michelle. I panicked. I said, is she all right? Can you find out, is she okay? And they didn't understand why I was so concerned about her. I think they thought I might have been jealous. I don't know why. I was thinking about this woman's well-being. I later found out that whenever my ex-husband and I had a conversation on the telephone about Michelle or the other kids, and his girlfriend was in the room at the time of the conversation, that after the conversation, he would lash out on her. So I suspect he may have been abusive to some way to her, whether it was verbally, physically, psychologically, financially, whatever. I'm pretty sure of it. I do have a couple articles with me that talk about the instances of rehab for abusers, which is kind of bleak, and it's a doggone shame. But there are some good men out here, and I married the one. Yes, ma'am.
I actually looked that up yesterday because the incident in Danvers with the teacher and the act of violence, I have a degree in psychology and sociology, and that I used to deal with abusive people. And I was trying to remember, violence, it's something that is learned. It's a learned behavior. And yes, according to what I read online, because I graduated from UMass Amherst in '77, that was a long time ago, they can be rehabbed, but there's a lot of, processes that they have to go through. And a lot of it is, what they see. Children do what they see. If you smoke a lot, drink a lot, you're going to have kids that are going to be doing that stuff. If they see, somebody being violent in the household, they're going to be violent unless they're separated and put in a program.
And I think boys that grow up in homes that are violent, they're twice as likely to become abusers themselves.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about what was healing for you after you left your relationship?
So much.
How did you heal yourself?
So much healing. I showed you earlier that picture of doing the skydiving. Doing those kinds of things to feel alive, talking. When I was prohibited from talking about it with the church that was supposed to be our covering during the time that my husband was a pastor, that was devastating to me. Because I needed somebody to share the confidence with. I needed someone. So I had to go outside that church. I eventually left that church because at first I used to sit up on the first row, and then when we were separated, the bishop would say, oh, well, just sit right back here. And then the next Sunday, oh, no, just go sit right back here. And then the next Sunday, oh, just go sit right. I ended up in the last row of the church, and I ended up leaving. But what was very, very therapeutic for me was to have friends who would call me and talk with me, listen, offer advice, pray with me, take me out of the house. Let's go for a walk. Let's talk. Books, music. I was singing. I was reading. I was trying things I had never tried before. So very healing for me was learning, first of all, that I was codependent, and to get out of that. To learn how I was influenced in my childhood to be in that kind of situation. And I had to learn just how important and precious I was as an individual not to be in a relationship like that.
Did you learn that in therapy or by reading?
Yes, but in therapy. I did a lot of crying in therapy, a lot of snotting, a lot of tears, a lot of box of tissues. It was great. My therapist was great. I had two therapists. Well, different stages. One was the man, and he would listen. He was so encouraging. And the woman, she helped me understand that it wasn't me. It was because of his upbringing and how he related to me, which was inappropriate. And to learn that I deserved so much more. But it was like therapy helped. Good therapy helped, yes.
How long were you in therapy for?
See.
Like once a week, going once a week?
Oh, yes, I was definitely going once
Right,
a week.
right.
I was going definitely once a week. I think at one time I might have done the group thing. I was better with the one-on-one once a week. Yeah, I remember getting up Saturday morning, trying to come home swollen elbow.
Another question?
Yes.
Early on you showed some real resilience, even though you were married since after 23 years,
Yeah.
you stayed. But you set aside that money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Where did that come from? for you? Because, I mean, that's not something a so-called victim does, but you did.
I did set aside money, and when he, forced me to write this check, I need this money, then I later found out, he was using drugs, right? And he would steal money from me. Come on now, steal money? I'd hide it in the Bible. He'd go find the Bible, take it out of there. So I learned a long time ago not to have a joint account with him. We might have had a joint account for bills, but I wasn't going to put any of my savings. So, when you get your direct deposits now, you can put a portion here and a portion there. So what I was doing was taking a portion and putting it someplace else that he did not know about. And I still have the other account for household bills, mortgage, gas, rent, electric, car note, those kinds of things. That was like my rainy day pocketbook. And when I definitely left, because I had my own apartment now, I didn't have a humongous mortgage. I didn't have an $1,800 mortgage. $700. So I was able to save away more. Then, at some point, I actually had to help my kids out and use that money. But at least I had it to do that for them. But, like I said, I was reading books and, I knew all the steps, so I'm going to do this. And when I wrote the book, I said, yes, I did that. I remember when that happened. And then some parts I read and I said, ooh, that happened? It was in black and white. It happened. Yes, ma'am.
I wonder about the statistics that you talked about, because I don't think this is something that's been really addressed, except for the past few decades maybe. So I think women in the past maybe had no one to speak to, and maybe it was just something that was acceptable and understood. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And even now, there's a lot of people who won't report it because they fear for their life. So there's a lot of people who are unreported. So 1 out of 4, I don't think is even close.
What can we do? What can we do?
I think it's the money. It's very expensive to get a divorce. It's very expensive to get out and get away from the abuse.
And if he is the sole breadwinner and you're a stay-at-home mom, you'll find it extremely difficult to get out. And if you have to go into a shelter and make your own way, that is very, very scary. Very scary. Yes,
I
ma'am.
think it's even more than that, though. I think when you've been beaten down, you don't have the confidence, you're too afraid, you don't know who to go to. You don't know what to do. When they made you, just deflate any confidence you might have.
Yes.
So, it just makes it hard to reach out. So I think domestic violence programs are good. But even then, sometimes, it could be life-threatening for some people to be participating in that. And, working with families and children, I think is important to prepare young people to realize it and overcome it, or whatever. But I think it's a terrible problem that a lot of people don't really even want to deal with.
I agree with you, ma'am. I really, really do. And that's why when people talk about domestic violence, I think we as men and women, and I thank the men that are in the room that are supporting this issue and this cause, I think it's important that we get the word out. Domestic violence is real, it's prevalent, and wherever you can talk about it, wherever you can let others know that resources are needed to help support women that are struggling with domestic violence. And it was a big struggle for me. For 23 years I stayed in it because of those fears of being out on my own, because of the shame and the guilt that I felt. And this is what my mom and dad went through. And it's a part of life. That's the way it is. But we still have to learn in here just how important we are. There are other organizations that help, and I think when we start with our young ladies and our young men in junior high school, in high school, and in college, to let them know just how devastating this malady is in our society. We have to let the word out. Yes, ma'am.
I think some people don't even know. They think it's normal. You know what I mean? Because that's all they've known generationally. And then other people who don't realize that have no understanding of the complications of that syndrome. So, it's just hard to see it sometimes. If that's, it's shocking, I think, sometimes to read literature and say, oh my gosh, this is what happened to my mother. And to have seen things differently, because very many times, of course, the person who's the a violator makes the other person to blame. It's all her fault.
Oh, yes. Mhm.
She's done wrong, she's crazy, all this other stuff.
And that's what the abuser wants to do, wants to confuse the issue and point to the victim as the person that's causing it. And we have to stand up. We got to tell them.
Oh, and sometimes you speak up for yourself, and that, almost seems like you're becoming, in terms of standing up for yourself, trying to stand up for yourself. Not that you want to become violent, but, sometimes in terms of speaking out or
You got to be
protecting
passionate
yourself.
about it. You got to be.
Right. Well, passion can get you a black eye, though, right? Passion can get you, a broken jaw, from speaking up for yourself. I'm glad at least the police are much more responsive.
I think they're more responsive now than they were back in 1977.
Oh, yeah, well, you get arrested
Yeah.
now. I mean,
Yeah.
enough
And there are a lot of laws
people have
going into
died.
place. Yeah.
Enough people have died that they're actually doing something, but then in the end, when the perpetrator can find them and kill them in a parking lot
Oh, my gosh.
or whatever. I mean, sometimes I know her husband was a police officer, and, the police department didn't want to deal with when he was, outside where she worked. Even
You know
though there
what?
was a restraining order and all that other stuff. He got the big boy, the
Mhm.
old boy network or
Mhm.
whatever,
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
go to court
correct.
and you get a divorce lawyer or a judge, and maybe they're reading their life
Oh,
for
my
all
gosh.
you know. You know what I'm saying?
It's the two things I want to mention about that. When this bishop told me that I could not talk about this issue to anybody, I said to myself, I bet you he's slapping around his wife. That's what I said to myself. That's just what I thought. And last week when I was doing the training with the law enforcement officers, they were saying, well, what does a woman do when her husband is a police officer and he's abusing her? Chaplains were in the audience, and chaplains recommended that this a female, the victim, would go to another police station, talk with the chaplain, and do the report over there. Because once they see the woman coming into the station where her husband works, things get all twisted. Things get all twisted. So that is an option. But if you know of any organizations that are here in Cape Cod that address the issue, support them. When they get out, they want to hand out flyers. They want to do a program. Get out there, support them, pass the word, let others know that domestic violence is not tolerated. And of course, yes, ma'am.
I just want to elaborate on what you said because we can be full. I'm one of the advocates at the Cape Cod Center for Women. And even if we're full to capacity, we're able to stay on the phone. The first question we ask is, are you safe?
Oh, you said.
We stay on the phone with them until either you are safe, there's a phone number. If you're not, we're going to say go straight to the police station or go to the emergency room. So for that tells me that she's had enough. Enough is enough. And it's time for me to get out.
Yeah.
So to even just pick up the phone to say, my name is Jane Doe. Do you have a bed? I'm sorry, we don't. Are you safe? Okay. And then we just dialogue and we counsel until they can get from here, even though they're up here, to at least here, because it's still up there, until they finally do get to a safe place. So we're still trying to give them some type of all the resources that we do have and the comfort for just that moment that someone took the time to just listen and hear them and identify with them and then give them the resources to get where they need to be. And sometimes with police officers and stuff, we move them out of state, country, networking, one shelter to another, whatever it takes. If we have the capability to do it for a family to start over again, that's the route we take.
Someone had said to me once, and I wonder what you think of this, that domestic violence is kind of the underlying reason for all social problems. That, if a person ends up in some kind of social problem, addictions or crime or whatever, the root was some form of domestic violence in the family.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry, I have not heard that. I have to look for that. Thank
Sort of
you
an
for sharing that.
underlying cause.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Yes, yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how hard would it be to find love?
Okay, I left in 97, divorced in 98. No one ever thought I would marry again. So from 98 to now. But I must admit, even though I got out of a bad relationship, I did get into a relationship that wasn't as bad, but it was still controlling nonetheless. And it took me a few years to realize, wait a minute, whoa, why won't I marry this man? And it was because something here was saying, no, it's not quite right. And it was because there were some aspects of the relationship that were controlling. I didn't even see it, but I felt it in here, couldn't identify it. So when I broke that relationship off, and their friends were saying, oh gosh, I'm glad you got rid of that guy. Oh, I thought he was cool. Yeah, he was all great and Gary's everything, but he was a big control. He was always taking over the show. Really? Yes, Lawanna. Oh. But yeah, it took me a long time. It took me a long time. But like I said, I'm blessed right now. Very good stuff. Yes, Marilyn.
Are there any percentages on the number of men who are abusers or potential abusers?
The percentage of men that are abusers, I don't think I have that percentage. I can research it for you. I do have, there's a small percentage of men that are in an abusive relationship as the victim.
Yeah,
But-
no, I'm just wondering, we're so focused on the woman, yet the men are out there. I saw one unverified percentage of 30%, which is higher.
That's high.
Higher, so they're abusing, let's see, that would mean women get abused by more than one man, right?
Oh my gosh, that's
But
horrible.
as I said, it was undocumented, so.
Okay, but I do have a couple articles with me about
Yeah.
the abusers and what we
So
can do to help them or
we
get rid of
need-
them. Or
We need to
I can
reach
share
them
that.
at an early age.
At a very early age. Very early age. Very early. Any other questions? I will be here for a little while in case you have any that you want to ask, any questions you want to ask me offline. I appreciate your coming. I appreciate your time. Thank you. And please stop in the back to get handouts, resources, and your very own personally autographed copy of the book.